Welcome back to Beyond the Headline, everyone. I am pretty giddy with excitement today because I'm here with the founder of Story, Rachel Shechtman. Rachel, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So people describe Story in many ways, but I think the best description is actually my reaction and everyone I's told reaction about Story. Just, I want to go. Tell us about Story and why I have that bubbling inside of me to be there.
I think it's a personal thing, but what we try to achieve, and I think resonates with many people, is this idea of surprise and delight. And I think, it's something that's been a little lost, I would argue, over the past couple of decades in brick and mortar retail. I'd argue there's been a resurgence over the past couple of years with Warby Parker and Birchbox opening up brick and mortar stores and brands like Harry's coming to life in the form of a barber shop. And so I think it's coming back for sure. So I think it's about, at Story, both the experience, but we're always changing, right? And so you don't know what's on the cover of your favorite magazine before that issue comes out. And you don't know what's in the next story until we tear down the coverings of the windows and you walk in and all the product's different and all the design is different and the layout, everything about it is different. And there's also something for, men, women, and kids between 5 and 95. So I think the combination of change and versatility. It's funny, when Stefan Sagmeister did our identity, he said, if you had to describe 2 words to describe your brand, what would it be? And, my aspiration has always been to be versatile and engaging. So in your case, it seems like it worked. So hopefully it works with other people.
I think it works, and I love that you mentioned department stores very briefly, because the last couple of years, I've just stopped shopping because I don't like to go out to the mall. I feel lost when I'm in a department store, and I generally don't like anything. But the experience of shopping online, I don't know the person, no one's helping me, so then I don't have a passion anymore.
Right.
For getting things. But when you learn, even on the Story website, you can learn about people and who created it.
We have an amazing editorial director. And so for us, it's not just about the product, it's about the person and the story behind it. And, the other thing is, it's not just about the person and the story behind it, but it depends on what story it is. So for example, if we have Panna Tea, which is this amazing matcha green tea, in our well-being story, we're going to tell their story very differently than we currently do because they're in our home for the holiday story. So someone consuming content, it's kind of like an issue of a magazine, right? If it's a health issue versus a gift guide, you're experiencing and wanting a content in a certain form because you have an expectation of that subject matter and how you receive information. And so, that's just one example of, I think, how we differentiate our storytelling. And then when we bring that story online, because it's outside of the walls of our store, it's also different in that format.
Before we really dive in, what happened to retail that there had to be a resurgence?
So I think a couple things happened, right? So there's that little thing called technology. And I think, the past 20 plus years, and it's kind of the 2 things that really, frankly, informed me being excited about kind of embarking on this journey into what I call retail media. And really the idea that, so you've had 20 plus years of incessant digital and technological innovation, and yet we live in real life. And you have retailers sitting behind their desk and saying, sales per square foot. And I'm thinking, well, online you have, crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, subscription retail, not just, new consumer interface, but fundamental new economic models and business plans being executed, and yet no one was innovating in retail. So I think, that was one thing where technology kind of put pressure on the model. And then I think the second thing that happened, right, like back in the day, there was something called a merchant. And a merchant was kind of like an editor of a magazine, right? They had a point of view. And instead of expressing that point of view through words and pictures, they did so through products. And that's actually kind of, what we do at Story is through, our editorial point of view is through merchandise and events. And so, back in the day, you had, Rosemary Bravo and you had Dawn Mello and Mickey Drexler, I think, is a classic example of a merchant. And then what happened is we moved to a spreadsheet culture. So buyers in stores were both driven by and compensated by sell-through. So you were driven by that assortment. So you'd be like, okay, I had a 89% sell-through of that black pant last year, so I can probably maybe bring in a second style and up it by 20%. And then you get your bonus based on the performance in that sell-through, right? It's not, hey, you bring a new brand into the store that attracts 10% more customers because it's a new type of brand, and therefore you're compensated because it's about customer acquisition. And so I think that marketing and merchandising, because of technology and because of paradox of choice, have become one. But inside organization, they're siloed, and training and incentive structures don't necessarily evoke and inspire collaboration more often than not. And so what happened was the spreadsheet culture gave way to sameness. So I could go into one department store and get Tommy Hilfiger, and another one, and it's the same sweater and the same pants. And now you might get an exclusive color in one store. But so now what's needed is a merchant, right? You need merchants to now differentiate these brands from each other. But where are you going to find merchants? Because we stopped teaching how to be a merchant. And so, I think it's an exciting time, because I think, because there's a combination of both a new reality that's requiring change, it's going to, give birth to new ways of creating experiences and storytelling through product.
And I think that's what you guys have achieved so well at Stories. There's nostalgia. I'm going to remember when I went. I mean, I didn't even physically go, and I remember some of the pictures that I saw, or the fact that you take so much time to tell someone's story, whether it's a small brand or it's a huge brand.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I think, let's see, we've worked with, I think the current number is over like 22 or 2,400 small businesses and brands, and then dozens of, Fortune 500 companies as sponsors, like Target and GE and Amex and stuff.
Do you prefer small or large, like just for the fun of the creative process?
No, because to me it's like, friends, right? It's like I have, a handful of best friends from childhood. I don't like one more than the other. I like them both for different reasons. I think many parents would say that about their kids, right? And so I think there's different things that are fun and exciting and inspiring and challenging about working with a big company. And there are equal things that are fun and challenging and inspiring about small companies. And it keeps us on our toes, and it's always new and different. So it's, it's a multi-layered process. And, you don't just have the variable of change, but you have the nuance. Brands are like people. And so you have the nuances of these different personalities. And so no two are alike any time. And so it's a fun challenge, and, it keeps it fresh.
So we'll start with small. What do you love about working with small businesses?
What do I love about working with small businesses? I think what I love is that they're open and they're eager. And so they're willing to, more often than not, take risks. They are open to conversations and to testing and trying different things. As a broad generalization, I'd say they're incredibly grateful. And so in terms of building relationships, there's something nice about, gratitude, and it's a choice, right? They choose to work with us and we choose to work with them, and being grateful for each other's role in that relationship is great. And, one of the unique things about our model is, we work with the majority of our brands on consignment in terms of the small businesses we work with. And the reason for that is that we don't look at ourselves just as a sales channel. And part of my philosophies are, you're not going to buy a yacht off of selling to one store anywhere. And so if you're going to invest in building a relationship, and I think many people in the world today would agree that time is the most valuable asset in luxury, right? So how do we all get a higher return on investment of time? And so for us, the store is a sales channel, but what it also is a living press release meets a trade show. Because 10% of the people who come to Story are people who are looking for new products in their businesses. So that's how I met the CEO of Target, was he walked through our doors. So one of the interesting things that's kind of, I could have never anticipated, but what's developed is 10% of our weekday traffic on average is other businesses. So it might be on a trend trek. It might be CEOs of companies. Like, that's how I met the CEO of Target. It might be, editors and people who work for magazines looking for new products to write about. So I think, therefore, the store becomes this democratized discovery platform where, for other businesses, they're drawn to Story to discover new things, and the value for these brands and small businesses, and sometimes big businesses too, it's not just small businesses, then they're getting introduced. So, some of these small businesses have gotten the biggest purchase orders of their career. A couple fun stories are, we have this brand, Smarty Pants Gummy Vitamins, and full disclosure, I'm on their advisory board. And we've sold them in the store. And one day, Courtney called me up and she goes, "Oh my God, I have to tell you, Pharrell just invested in Smarty Pants." And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's so cool. Awesome. Yay." She's like, "No, that's not the cool part." She goes, "I asked how they learned about Smarty Pants, and he said through Story, that his head of creative bought Smarty Pants at Story, thought that it would resonate, gave it to him, and then he was interested in an investment." And there's not just like one or two stories like that. There is dozens and dozens and dozens of stories like that, and then hundreds of stories of people who've gotten wholesale orders or media attention because of it. And so that's what I love, is like really just being able to do that. And it's really there's the investment of doing consignment, and I'd like to think we make it very easy for people based on the process that we've created for that. And so that's probably my favorite part.
And I think that's a great way to segue into the pitch night that you have, which is part of telling the story. If you can show everyone your necklace.
All right. So this is my necklace underneath my headphones. You're probably like, "Oh, what makes it so special?" Or maybe it's pretty. But it is pretty and special. And then it does this. So it's a hidden message. So you can probably see this one says Story. So this is a designer, Beth Mockery. And she came into Story in 2012. And that was what happened then, was we were getting pitched so many products, people emailing or coming into the store saying, "Hey, will you sell my products?" And I didn't have time to see them all. And so basically, my whole life, ever since my first trade show was when I was 12. So I always loved discovering and finding people and things in different places. And so I thought, okay, if you're an independent designer or small business and brand, what do you want? You want two things. You want sales and you want press. So I reached out to my friends, Josh Ruman and Evan Ornstein, who started Cool Hunting. And I said, "You know what? You guys do this really cool gift guide that's super coveted. So let's do a night, and people can pitch to be sold in Story or pitch to be in your gift guide. No promise of anything. They get 3 minutes to pitch." And the format's a different one because it's not a spectator sport. You can't come and watch pitch night. You can only come if you're participating. And people pitch one-on-one, and then it's a community night where people meet each other. And so bottom line is, Beth Mockery came to our first pitch night. She pitched. I have a 10-second rule, and it passed my 10-second rule of like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And we put it in the store, and then a little unknown lady by the name of Whoopi Goldberg walked in our store and loved the product and bought one and then put it on The View. And so now Beth Mockery's hobby is her full-time job. And she's since won the Fashion Group International Rising Star Award, and she sells on her website, and she sold through Fred Siegel. And so since then, we've done, I think, a couple dozen or somewhere in between pitch nights, and brought in people like Mindy Grossman, who's the CEO of HSNI, or Tori Johnson from Good Morning America, and Adam Glassman from Oprah. So think about it, right? Like, all you have to do is have a ready-made product that if I wanted to sell it, or Adam wanted to write about it, like, you could accommodate that. But you could literally have like started making jewelry 2 weeks ago, and as long as you could fulfill a purchase order, in 2 weeks be, pitching to Mindy Grossman from HSN.
That is crazy. When you look back on all of your experiences thus far, is there one highlight, or is it too hard to choose?
Is there one highlight? My professional experience or my whole life?
Oh, I've never asked someone about their whole life, so I'm going to ask you about your whole life.
I'd say probably the most influential experience was my mom taking me to the gift show when I was 12 years old. And I talk about it all the time, but it is true, right? It was my introduction to merchandise and product and the idea that you could actually shop for a living. But that was probably one of the more pivotal moments. Another one, when I was 16 years old, I went to the first ever 7th on Sale event, which was raised the most money for AIDS at the time, and was started by Donna Karen before there was, social entrepreneurship and, businesses like Tom's and whatnot. And so what that really taught me is that, selling something wasn't just about consumption, and you could integrate different worlds. And for her, it was bringing nonprofit and for-profit together. And she did so in such a well-curated, beautiful way that made sense and had impact in both worlds. And so to me, that was the aha moment, that it didn't have to be either or, and it could be and. I think professionally, highlights, I don't know. I've just been, second to having an amazing family. I'd probably say I'm most grateful for the people I've met. And I've just, someone once said, what, it's a combination of luck, timing, and smarts or something. And I don't know about the smarts part, but the luck and the timing, standing in my store in sweatpants and meeting the chairman of Target and then getting to do a partnership with them, or happen to be in the store the day that, it's 7:30 in the morning when Martha Stewart showed up unannounced, and I'm never, yeah. And so, the amount of, getting to speak at the Women's Wear Daily CEO Summit, Mayor Bloomberg doing a press conference at our store. I mean, I'm just beyond grateful. And, I kind of see it as my responsibility that if I've had the serendipitous opportunity to have access to these opportunities and these people, how can we share that and play matchmaker with other people and industries that should kind of cohabitate?
How about, in that light, what surprised you? What did you not expect to happen along the way?
I don't know that I expected Story to kind of get the attention that it did. I had no business plan. It was like a Rachel theory, which anyone, all my friends know. And I was a consultant for 10 years prior. So I've had lots of Rachel theories, and this was a biggie. And so I just kind of did it. And
From
I
a
had
bet, right?
Well,
the store opened so quickly because of a bet.
It opened quickly because of a bet with Ben Kaufman, the founder of Quirky, and Mophie. But yeah, Ben's one of my best friends, and he bet me a lot of money I couldn't open in 30 days, and I did. But the business didn't start because of a bet. It was kind of, I had a startup in 1999. I never started. And I think since then, in my consulting career, I've had this kind of subconscious iterative process of what became Story and retail media. And then Blake Mykowski from Tom's Shoes and I were driving, and he said, enough of this someday shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but there you have it. He goes, you've been talking about this forever. It's time to do it. And so it wasn't necessarily a bet, but it was kind of a kick in the butt to say, like, are you going to keep on talking? Or are you going to start doing? And, and so that was in, let's see, April, May of 2011. I signed the lease at the end of October 2011. And then we had our soft opening on December 1st, 2011. And I think there's been many, many surprises. I think one of them was, you referenced the bet, and for I guess I'll tell the quick story is Ben Kaufman bet me I couldn't open in 30 days. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be open for Christmas. And he's like, no, you're not, dude. He's like, you have no running water. You have no cement. You have no electricity. And so he bet me a big chunk of money. And especially as a startup who didn't raise money, I was even that much more incentivized, not to mention I wanted to beat him because he always wins his bets. And so I thought, okay, so I'm not in the construction business and I don't know about construction. So how am I going to do this? And the way I solved that is I just used my landlord's contractor because they already had all the permitting. So then I was like, wait a minute, I have no inventory and I don't have the trademark on my name, right? So I'm not going to like launch a company without the trademark on my name. And so basically what I decided to do was, probably after a couple glasses of wine, I think I had the idea and I thought, you know what, back to kind of one of the philosophies that shaped just the general creation of Story as a business model was, if we're the same people who live online, who live offline, And if we permit and we have this vocabulary online, and one of those behaviors and identities that businesses embrace at the early stage is one called beta. And people basically, by having beta on their app or their website, are saying, hey, we're live, but we're testing some things out, so kind of be easy on us. And so I'm like, all right. So I called us a startup store beta, and then we only sold things from startups like Birchbox and Bobble Bar and Art Space. And so that was the bet. And I think, a week later, the headline online at Fast Company was, can a startup store reinvent retail? And I'm thinking, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. And I'm leading, learning, and doing, which can be a recipe for many sleepless nights. And so I think that was probably the most surprising thing that's happened to date.
I'm glad that you mentioned, really testing things out, because you and I were just talking. There's a joke that I've read in a couple of interviews that Story's your living lab, and every year you have a new theory.
I do, yeah.
Can you tell us a theory for 2016?
Yeah, I mean, I think the theory for sometimes they're quote unquote theories or questions or trends I want to explore or prove. Retail media was the biggest one of all. And from what I understand, given our business model and the concoction of both, didn't really exist before. So I think that was the biggest one. And then, pitch night was really about how you take the democratization of discovery and access between big and small in a physical world. And so I think for this coming year, I don't know that I'm going to be, since it's in the nascent stage of we're not even in 2016 yet. I think one of the things I'm just like thinking a lot about, right? So there's the obvious convergence of, the future of retail experience being, part entertainment, part experiential, and entertainment, I guess, are related, part community, and then somewhere, maybe not, consumption fits into that, right? And so, but I think the bigger thing that I'm really excited about is small is the new big. And kind of, I think you can see little indicators of that. I think Amazon launching Handmade is one. I think what we've seen happen in Detroit over the past 5 years with Shinola and with people moving there, and with what's happening with the revitalization of downtown, which has been talked for so many years. If you go there, you actually see it. And it's, there's so many entrepreneurs, but, you have major Fortune 100 companies sitting there talking about how do we reach Etsy sellers and, the long tail effect. And so, a friend of mine said, private's the new public. It's great to be a private company right now. And I don't have experience in that world, so I can't say. But I think what I do have experience is, small is the new big. And so I don't necessarily, I haven't started the year, so I don't know how that theory is going to manifest, but or what shape and form it's going to take. But I'm just intrigued by it as a thought process and subject.
For those theories and just any type of creativity, what gets you excited? Are you like sitting early in the morning and it comes to you, or are you out like in Story and talking to someone?
I'm so not a morning person. It's not even funny. I could like put my alarm on the other side of the room or like across the apartment and I'll still go back to bed. I don't, you know what? I don't really know. I mean, it's unexpected places, I think. And it's, it might be a conversation with a friend or, someone in the industry who I admire and I might have lunch with, and they might say something that sparks an idea. I could be, walking a trade show and see some like wacky product that then sparks like, oh my God, and it might be a complete non sequitur. So it's really like people and products. And I know it probably sounds evasive and simplistic, but it really is.
It's like in the moment.
It's in the moment, and it just, it's happened my whole life. It's funny. My dad just told me a story that he bumped into an old babysitter of mine from when I was 6, who I didn't even remember. And she, didn't necessarily know what I was doing now. And what she said to my dad is, she goes, all I remember about Rachel is we'd go into stores and we'd go to leave the store and she'd be like, come here. I want to show you something. And the babysitter said to my dad, I'd tell Rachel like, oh, we have to leave. And she'd be like, no, we don't need to buy something. I just found something really cool I need to show you. And so for me, like, I don't remember that moment, but I do at the gift show. I think it's just, It could be a new person. It could be a new idea. I used to, when I had more time, go to a lot of conferences. A friend was just like, why are you going to CES? I like learning and collecting information. And I think oftentimes it comes at unexpected times and unexpected places. So you just have to be open to it instead of look for it.
I love that. And I think there's something, when you're explaining that you go to the conference, when you're holding something in your hand, the aha moment feels so much more intense.
Right.
Have you had any ahas this year?
In terms of products or ideas or?
I'll go with ideas.
Aha ideas. I don't know if I've had aha
Or I guess
ideas.
it could be a product too, because it's sort of an idea.
Right. Well, one I have, an aha idea came from a conversation with Donald Robertson, who's kind of an artist who's exploded on Instagram. He's known on Instagram as Drawbertson. And
he was just at Bergdorf's.
yes, exactly.
Yes.
So he's definitely, having a moment and has a big fan base. And I was on the phone with him, and this is a perfect example. So we're talking on the phone, and I had reached out to him because I wanted to do an event with us for one of our clients who is a big brand. And he said, it's not really a fit. So, I have a hard time taking no for an answer, but I also know when to stop. And, no might not be no. It might just say that's not the right question or that's not the right answer. And so he said, well, if you want me to say yes, why don't you come up with an idea to do something with my book that's coming out in August called Mitford and the Fashion Zoo? And I thought to myself for a minute, and I just paused and I thought, well, I have nothing going on in August that's scheduled yet. And so I didn't ask within a second. I just like, no, let's not just do something with Mitford. Just take over the whole store. We've never had an artist do that. And why don't you be the story? And it just became this kind of, this also goes back to luck because it takes a certain personality and whatever. And then it just became this kind of explosion of like, we can do this and then we can do this. And, there was also a tremendous amount of trust. And, oftentimes I use dating analogies to talk about business. And, I think you'll hear some of these common things when I talk about working with different individuals and brands. But, he let me go rogue with his artwork to put together collaborations. And we did 40 exclusive products in about 8 weeks. And it was everything from collaborations with, I had one thought I had was, let's take Donald's emojis that he just launched and make them into embroidered pouches. And then we brought in Bow and Drape, which is,
Bow and Drape, yes.
They're awesome.
Do not worry. I love that.
So we put them in the store and you can make your own Donald emoji shirt. And so, back to creating opportunities, Sugar Fina candy. We did a limited edition with Urban Ears headphones, Tidal flip-flops. And so, this amazing woman in Texas, Miss Yellow, which does the most insane kid shirts. Like, if those folks wanted to, do a licensing agreement with Donald Robertson, they'd have to go through his agent and do this, and they probably couldn't afford it, or they might not even know about him. So for us to be able to, A, facilitate that opportunity for small businesses, B, help Donald by bringing his content to life in new ways, C, generate sales and income from that and give consumers a new experience and therefore generate buzz and media attention. That's one kind of example of that.
I feel the aha. I'm so excited. Rachel, before we go, when you think of the future, whether it's for Story, the retail business, or just your life, you choose whichever aspect you want. What do you want it to look like?
Well, for my own life, I'd like to work a little less because it's been busy, but it's a good problem to have. I think the thing when, it's interesting because, you could read different interviews that I've had with media over the past 4 years, and where you'll see a lot of inconsistency is saying, oh, we'll do e-commerce next year, or we'll have 5 stores in 3 years, or do LA. And it's not because I wasn't telling the truth. It's that what happened was, sometimes intellectually and emotionally we're on 2 different wavelengths, right? And again, back to a dating analogy, just because you break up doesn't mean you have closure. And so, as I mentioned earlier, my one goal was to be profitable in a year. That was my number one goal with my wacky theory of retail media. So what happened was when we were profitable after a year, right? Intellectually, I crossed that finish line, right? And then when I look back at it in hindsight, I was like Forrest Gump for 3 years, and I was running, but I didn't know where I was running. But I could keep running because I got food and water in the form of media attention and inbound interest from sponsors, right? So that was feeding me to keep running. And so, I would react when I was asked a question, but I didn't know where I was running. And so it wasn't until that kind of emotional caught up with the intellectual about 6 months ago where I really stopped and thought, like, where the heck are we running and why are we running? And I think, I've always answered the scale question as it relates to new points of distribution, additional stores and markets and digital. But to me, what I'm super excited about and what I think is, super like sexy for brain food is scale behind the scenes. So, you wouldn't walk into Story and say, hey, they created a 60-second spot for Amex, or Pepsi used them as a living lab for R&D to test a new product before it was at market. And so, we'll be announcing some relationships with some pretty big brands that aren't just going to be about sponsoring a story, but about an ongoing relationship. And so it's kind of invisible scale. It's scale that exists kind of through strategic differentiated service offerings that are a little non-traditional, but that leverage our experience in having a physical footprint. So I'd say that's the thing that's kind of exciting me the most about the future.
Very cool. So we'll all stay tuned.
Yes.
Last question. What's one question that you've always wanted to be asked, but nobody has ever asked you?
I mean, maybe that question.
Well, we're
No,
set then.
I don't mean that as a scapegoat. What's the one question that I've always wanted to be asked that no one's ever asked? That really is a good question. I actually have to think about it for a minute.
Personal, professional, athletic achievement from when you were 7.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't be athletics.
Yeah, same.
Maybe what's the best advice your parents ever gave you?
That's a good one. What is it?
So, I mentioned earlier, I'd probably say the thing I'm most grateful for in life is my relationship with my family. And I just have two parents who I happen to love hanging out with as people, not just because we share the same DNA. So, what my dad said to me when we were younger, and it wasn't just what he said, but it was kind of how he behaved, and my mom too, but it was really him, is, he made the simple comment, which is out there in the world, the president takes a shower and goes to the bathroom the same way you do. And when I saw him treat people, and it didn't matter anything, it didn't matter age, it didn't matter income, it didn't matter fame, it didn't matter, sexuality, gender, nothing. And even in, one would argue, more controversial or polarizing settings, he is someone, at his 70th birthday party, you could sit there and hear what everyone said about him. And the number one thing that everyone said was non-judgmental. And I don't think I've ever met someone who was as non-judgmental. I don't even think he would know how to spell the word judgment. And so I think that's just kind of instilled a subconscious fearlessness, so that going up to someone and talking to them, or cold calling, which I'm like one of the few people on the planet who love to cold call, there's a fearlessness because, if you're just open to it, someone can say no, but, if you're doing it for the right reasons, chances are, someone's willing to have a conversation. And so I'd probably say that's the piece of advice and the example that's had the most influence on me.
Wow, what a way to end it. That was a good one. And you ended it with your question, so thank you. Before we go, how can everyone stay up to date with you? And then also for those in New York and traveling to New York, how can they stay up to date with Story?
So before you go to Story, the number one thing you should do is check our website, because we always close to change it over. And so, it always I always feel so bad when we're changing over and someone knocks on the door and they're like, I came all the way from here.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, oh my God, just look on our website, please. And so I guess it's an occupational hazard of our model. So I'd say A, always check our website. B, the best way to find out about the new story and events we're doing is signing up for our newsletter on our website. We don't spam you. We probably send out a total of, maybe 10 emails a year at best. And, we do a ton of events. So it's not just about pitch night. It could be mixology class or interviewing Bobby Brown or yoga and Pilates during Wellness Story. And, they're all complimentary and free of charge. And, Instagram's always fun. I think you'd look at our feed and maybe one could argue we're schizophrenic, but I think, it's easier to control our brand in a physical space in terms of the subconscious continuity of our point of view because we're this living magazine. And so, our Instagram feed might be all about Donald Robertson's art, but then you go into holiday and then you go into wellness or different subject matters. And so there's kind of something for everyone. This is story. Our website and our Instagram is thisisstory.com. So, but we're called Story, but that was the URL and the social we could get for now.
That works. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.